Hello, everyone. Excuse me, and welcome back to another episode of the 8-Bit Adventures podcast. We're here bringing you the latest and greatest geeky news of the week. I am your host, Sean Hayes, and we've got a whole bunch of gaming news this week, and then a deep dive into the latest Dungeons & Dragons book, Fisman's Treasury of Dragons. So, if that is of interest to you, if you are of the Draconic persuasion, be sure to stick around for that. So, hope everyone's doing well. This is the last podcast episode before Halloween, so happy Halloween, everyone. Hope you get lots of candy and wear silly costumes. So, let's get right into it. So, first up, very exciting news. ConcernedApe Eric Barone, maker of Stardew Valley, has announced his next project, Haunted Chocolatier. So this is going to be an action RPG slash gathering game, but it's sort of like a companion game to Stardew Valley, where this one it's set in like some sort of alpine village, and you get a spooky castle filled with ghosts in which to make spooky ghost haunted chocolate. And there's like weird like painting worlds and stuff that like function as dungeons. And basically you're going around collecting ingredients to make chocolate. So sounds sort of conceptually a little bit similar to Moonlighter, although I don't know if it's going to have like the procedurally generated dungeon aspect to it. But yeah, excuse me. So one of the things noted is that Stardew Valley draws a lot of inspiration from the sun, whereas this game will draw a lot of inspiration from the moon. So it'll have like sort of spooky elements to it, but it's not intended to be like evil or scary. Just that it's focused on sort of nighttime and the moon and shadows and stuff. And that the ghosts aren't scary ghosts, and they're not evil ghosts. They're spooky little helpers that help you make chocolate and run your chocolate shop. So although it's been announced, there's quite some time left in development, so it could be a couple years out. So yeah, very excited about that. Next up, Phasmophobia. Speaking of spooky ghost games, Phasmophobia just had a Halloween update, brings a couple changes to difficulty modes, also introduces nightmare mode. So namely, the changes are like the easier modes have gotten slightly easier, and the more difficult modes have gotten a little bit more difficult. And nightmare mode is very difficult, including things like ghosts won't give you all of the evidence. They'll only give you 2 out of the 3 pieces of evidence, and then you have to identify them by behavior. And they also switch rooms that they are associated with. There are 4 new ghosts, including the twins, Raiju, Obake, and Onryo. So like Onryo are afraid of fire but become enraged like when fires go out. Raiju siphon power from electrical devices and move faster. The Obake is a shapeshifter, so it will have unusual footprints and fingerprints. And the twins is a dual ghost that's on the map. So like they can't hunt at the same time, but they can cause ghost events to appear in 2 different locations. There are new weather effects. So weather, there are different types of weather that can appear on the map. So like light rain, heavy rain, high winds, snow, fog. They all do different things. They all affect gameplay in various ways. So, like, for example, wind makes it difficult to use things like microphones, like parabolic microphones. Fog makes it difficult to see using night vision. heavy rain and storms like will cause like lighters and candles to go out. Snow, cold temperatures affects the thermometer, and things like that. There's also an outdoor campsite map. That's the very exciting thing that everybody's been super impressed with. Where it's actually an outdoor campsite, so the ghost is wandering around outside. There is still a safe zone. The parking lot is the safe zone, so there's like a gate to the parking lot that you go through. But like you can hide inside tents. There's a cabin that has its own key and locked doors. And there's a little Easter egg if you approach the lake. There's also some interesting stuff for the limited time event in the lobby. So I don't want to spoil that, but make sure to actually, if you play the game, check out the lobby and explore it, because there's some spooky stuff going on there. So very excited for this. Couple tweaks to gameplay, and there's supposedly another update coming next week to balance some changes out that were made, namely regarding like fingerprints. And just a couple of balance tweaks. Next up, Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp is getting delayed to spring 2022. So this was originally slated for early December. I guess they need some more time to fine-tune stuff, so it is being delayed, unfortunately. So this is a remaster of the Game Boy Advance / DS games. And this is coming to Switch. So unfortunately getting delayed a couple months. This kind of means that like outside of the Diamond and Pearl remakes, Nintendo doesn't really have any titles coming out for the rest of the year. Like that's it. Because the next one, Pokemon Legends Arceus, is not coming out until January. But this, they released a bizarre sort of found footage trailer, like Blair Witch style, and then like did a follow-up where they quote unquote cleaned up the footage to reveal Snowrunt is going to be in the game, as well as two new forms, Hisuian Zorua and Hisuian Zoroark. So fans of these sort of spooky shadow fox Pokemon, they're gonna get white and pink, almost frappe like forms for this new region. And they are confirmed to be normal and ghost types, so unique typing for Pokemon, pretty strong. So we'll see. Not quite sure. I think they mentioned that like this game won't be part of VGC, so I don't know if you'll be able to use them in the competitive metagame, but you know, that's that. All right, next up, God of War, another one of Sony's flagship titles, will be coming to PC, specifically Steam, January 14th. So this is the latest God of War game. So it's not God of War Ragnarok, but it's, you know, the God of War that's been out on PS4. So this is coming to PC. Which again, you know, for someone like me who does not own a PlayStation, sort of calls into question, you know, if you wait long enough, do you need one? I mean, you know, if you want to play stuff, you know, right out the gate, yes, for exclusives, but like even Sony's bringing their stuff to PC. So, but yeah, so if you haven't played that game and you're interested in it, it's coming January 14th, 2022. All right, finally for our quickfire news. Oh, I forgot to play the bumper. Never mind. Activision Blizzard, 20 employees have, quote, exited the company, and another 20 have been reprimanded, according to Activision Blizzard's sort of, you know, HR department, as part of the ongoing harassment suits. The company is seeking a stay against the DFEH, citing ethics violations related to its settlements with the EEOC. So I've reported previously, there are multiple lawsuits going on, and they settled with the EEOC for about like $18 million, I think it was. The DFEH is arguing against that, and because of the fact that settlement now like removes evidence that they had gathered that was crucial to their case, or like it can be removed, and now Activision Blizzard is fighting back, seeking a stay, saying that because like there was this stuff going on, that it's an ethics violation for what's the right phrase? Oh god, I can't think of the right phrase. But a conflict of interest is that they're like fighting against the settlement in order to bolster their own case, and they're arguing that that's an ethics violation. We'll see. This is largely dependent on a judge's ruling. Honestly, I hope that the stay does not hold, because like it's big, and like there needs to be some sort of accountability held to this company for all the stuff that was happening. So we'll have to see what happens. Now, mind you, there's still like 3 other lawsuits that are happening, so this is by no means like the end of the Activision Blizzard woes regarding this whole scenario. So, okay, so that wraps up quickfire news for this week. So our deep dive is going to be about Fisman's Treasury of Dragons. All right, so Fisman's Treasury of Dragons is the latest Dungeons & Dragons book. It is a source book. It has some player options, but is sort of meant to be more of like a DM book, in that it has sort of interesting world building and creature stats and stuff for dragons specifically, and focusing a lot on dragons proper and not like creatures that have the dragon type. For folks that have been in Dungeons & Dragons for a while, this is basically 5e's Draconomicon. It has all of the same stuff that's been printed before in Draconomicons. In fact, even reprints some stuff that has been in Draconomicons before. But all in all, there's some pretty interesting stuff going on here. So they introduced this concept of like the first world, where according to this like draconic poem that nobody knows where it came from, it's like this dragon mythos, that that Bahamut and Tiamat together created the first material plane. There's like an original material plane, and that dragons ruled over it. There were no humanoids. It was like all dragons. And then the other gods came in with their humanoids, and they wanted to take it over, and it sundered the material plane into an infinite number of like seedling worlds. And this is where you get things like Faerun, Orth, Kryn, Eberron, and like every material plane that you play on. That's what this is. And so because of that, it's every dragon has an echo of itself on other material planes. So see in the chat, so that's why Dark Sun is what it is. Dark Sun, there is only one dragon. And so, I mean, this is sort of spoilers for people that don't know the story of Dark Sun. The dragon was a guy. The whole point of the Sorcerer Kings is that they are jockeying for power to ascend to become another dragon. And it was a whole thing about like becoming the dragon to like knock off some sort of overarching evil, but in order to do so, like it required ruthless amounts of power and siphoning massive amounts of energy in the form of magic. So the dragon in Dark Sun is like this overarching tyrant of near godlike power, and unique. One of the explanations that could be offered as to why, dragons don't show up in places like Dark Sun is dragons who become enlightened and aware that of echoes of other material worlds get this thing called dragon sight, in which they become aware of their other echoes. So sort of like a Marvel multiverse sort of a thing, or Spider-Verse concept. A Shardalon is put in as an example of a Shardalon becomes aware of his other echoes, and part of his story is he goes around consuming his other echoes to gain power. So it could be that like it's all of the dragons that would exist in Dark Sun, or would exist in a primordial Dark Sun world, in primordial Athos, sorry, which is the name of the world in Dark Sun, is we're all consumed by other echoes. So it's a very timely thing, coinciding with Marvel's recent push for multiverse stuff. Makes me wonder if the design team at Wizards has sort of been looking at where pop culture trends have been going in things like comics, and in like the popular culture, and not just sort of the niche comics culture, and really latching onto this idea, because that's where the entirety of D&D products are moving toward. Yeah, they really play up this dragon sight thing. And dragons can eventually become these beings called great worms, where it's just like super, almost godlike dragons. And typically involved by consuming like other echoes of itself. So they also list like Chronepsis, who previously was listed as a draconic god of like fate and death and time, is being now listed as like a black great worm that has devoured multiple echoes of itself and then just like pieced out and went to the outer planes. So they give some options for new Dragonborn. So this is like a variant where really cool thing, you can use your breath weapon as an attack. So if you take the attack action, you can replace one of your attacks with a breath weapon. I really wish it would have been just like a bonus action, but because this kind of benefits martial classes more than spellcasters, or really anybody that gets extra attacks. So because it's specifically when you take the attack action, you can replace one of your attacks. So like you can't sort of cheese it by like dual wielding and then replace your offhand attack. Like that's not how that works. However, you do get it a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Would it work? Yeah. No, it does not work that way. I'd have to look up the ruling on, because I think you can only do an offhand attack if you do the attack action. So you might be able to, but I mean, it seems weird in that like you could cheese it by dual wielding. And then essentially, well, yeah. I'm sure there's going to be like a sage advice asking that. My inclination would be, I don't know. I mean, I think it would be fine to just have it be a bonus action anyway, so but I think ultimately the idea is for it to benefit martial classes better, because it's a 30-foot line for Chromatic Dragonborn. I think Gem Dragonborn is a 15-foot cone. Metallic Dragonborn is a 15-foot cone. So, it's somewhat of an upgrade because it used to be an action to do it. So, and then you also get like other benefits. So, previously Dragonborn were kind of boring in that it was like you get energy resistance, you get a breath weapon, and that's it. Like that's what you get. But now, Chromatic Dragonborn can become immune to the damage for a minute. Gem Dragonborn get it's not quite telepathy. They can send telepathic messages. They can't receive telepathic messages, or they can't receive thoughts from creatures. And then at 5th level, they get a fly speed, a limited fly speed for 1 minute. Okay. So yeah, so chromatic the immunity for Chromatic Dragonborn is starting at 5th level. Weird. So technically they get less features than Gem Dragonborn. That's interesting. Yeah, that's weird. And Metallic Dragonborn get 2 breath weapons. The second one they get is at 5th level, which is when you use it, you get to choose to either push people and knock them prone or make them incapacitated. So yeah. Oh, you know what? They also don't get extra features. So I think it's just Gem Dragonborn just get extra features. Well, namely being telepathy. So I guess that's not that big of a deal. So we get Way of the Ascended Dragon Monks, which is basically you can deal energy damage with your unarmed strikes, and breath attacks that gradually get better. And a lot of the other stuff covers like draconic-like abilities. So blind sight, flying, damage resistance, frightful presence, that sort of stuff. Drake Warden Rangers, which is you summon a dragon. And at this point, it used to be that it was a limited time. Now it just lasts until it's reduced to 0 hit points, you summon it again, or you die. So, unlike Beastmaster Rangers, your Drake does not persist after you die. Or, like, I guess after you die. Yeah. So that's interesting. It's also, you choose how it looks. So this is an interesting tidbit, is that you could have an evil person who summons like a gold drake, which can cause all sorts of confusion and chaos. And you get to pick its essence, or its elemental essence type. Gradually gets bigger, gets a fly speed, breath weapon, that sort of stuff. This is kind of how Wizards decided to build Dragon Riders, which I find interesting. And really, you're not able to get the flying mount version until level 15. So I think it's kind of silly, just because it's so easy to get flying mounts well before then. but whatever. No, it specifically has so at level 7 the Drake grows to medium size. You can ride it if your medium size are smaller. So it removes sort of that size restriction, but it specifically says while riding your Drake, it can't use the flying speed of this feature. You have to wait until level 15 when it grows to large size, and then it says when you ride your Drake, it is no longer prohibited from using its fly speed. So it's basically it cannot carry you regardless of your size until level 15. Because it's specifically called out. That, and I can guarantee that was basically put in there to avoid providing an advantage for halfling, goblin, gnome type characters. We also get basically some weird little ties that you can just, have to your hero. There are 3 Draconic Feats, which are basically gift of X type of dragon, chromatic, gem, metallic, which gives you some minor benefits. Namely, you can imbue weapons with elemental energy, resistance to elemental damage as a reaction, a telekinetic burst, cure wounds, Gift of the Metallic Dragon's super strong, FYI, folks. It's you get cure wounds that you can cast once per day without using a spell slot. But you can also then cast it with spell slots, and you get to pick which ability modifier. You then also basically get like shield that can apply to anybody within 5 feet of you. That the AC bonus is equal to your proficiency bonus. And you can use it a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. So like it takes you a while for it to become as good as shield. But you can use it on other people, and you can get to use it multiple times per day. Now note is that if you're a spellcaster that gets access to shield, you can have both. So you can still only use your reaction once, but it means that, like, once you reach a certain level where you get +5, now you can use that ability and use that up before you have to use spell slots to cast shield. Also note that shield does increase your AC until the start of your next turn, whereas this is just against that attack. So it's interesting mechanics that work with shield. But yeah. Also, you could use this on somebody else that used shield. Yeah, technically shield does also block magic missiles. If that, like, I consider that an edge case. Because how often are you going to have enemies that cast magic missile? And then whether you want, like, depending on how many you get hit with, whether you want to burn a spell that gives you +5 AC for that. So, let's see. We get a bunch of spells. We get some cool magic items. Some very, like, these are all sort of on the higher end. But some notable ones. We get dragon lances, dragon wing bow. So this is my own character in a game that I played in, had a bow that was very similar to this, where it's the the bow is infused with a certain type of elemental damage. You deal an extra d6 damage of the same type. And it produces its own ammunition. There is a legendary flail from Tiamat that when you hit with an attack roll, the target takes an extra 5d4 damage. And you can also use an action to have it do a breath weapon in a 90-foot cone. So, the big one, though, the big one that I want to talk about. Well, first, let's talk about, they put a BFG. So I say this as in the Quake gun. This is called the Topaz Annihilator. It's a ranged weapon that resembles a musket, requires firearms proficiency, does not require any ammunition as it draws its power from a Topaz Dragon scale. Two-handed weapon, has a range of 100 to 300 feet. Deals 2d6 necrotic damage. And if it reduces a creature to 0 hit points, it reduces the creature to dust. And once per day can cast Disintegrate. Ludicrous. That is a legendary item that requires attunement. So, very, very powerful type item. Yeah. Like, it would have been good enough without Disintegrate. And you could have, like, bumped it down to rare, maybe. I mean, just by virtue of the fact that it's Topaz and not Bahamut. Let me tell you, Bahamut ain't dealing necrotic damage to anybody. Topaz dragons, their breath weapon is a cone of desiccation that saps water and vitality from people and does necrotic damage. So Bahamut would be radiant damage. But yes, it holds a glowing yellow scale from a topaz dragon in its heart. But the one that I really want to talk about is Ruby Weave Gem, which is a legendary item that requires attunement by a spellcaster. Has 3 charges, regains all charges at dawn. When you cast a spell, you can expend up to 3 charges to ignore material components with a gold piece cost up to 500 gold per charge expended. And when you finish a long rest, choose a spell from any class list of a level that you can cast, and you know that spell, and you can cast it with your spell slots until the end of your next long rest. This is quite possibly, for a spellcaster, the best item in the game now. Like, especially if you're if you're a cleric, this is quite possibly the best item in the game. Just because of the fact that, like, it means now you can ignore material component costs for, like, Raise Dead, Revivify, and things like that. Greater Restoration, all those things were, like, part of the balancing cost is having a high gold piece material cost that gets, that gets consumed. Hero's Feast, you ignore that. Now, granted, with Hero's Feast, it's a focus, so you only pay for that cost once. With the other spells, you have to pay for that cost every time. However, you could still use this for that purpose. And then the fact that once, whenever you rest, like do a long rest, you just get a spell. Like, that is the best feature that bards get of, like, learning a spell, like learning any spell in the game up to a level that you can cast. Now you also get that ability. So this is bananas. Yanas. Right there. Also introduces horde magic items. So this works on so for fans of Critical Role, these work on a system somewhat similar to Vestiges of Divergence, with the difference being, so it comes in 4 tiers: Slumbering, Stirring, Wakened, and Ascendant. How they increase in power is that they have to be steeped in a dragon's horde for a given amount of time. Normally it takes a year to reach the maximum possible state allowed by the age of the dragon's horde. However, when a dragon is slain, you can then take a horde item and steep it in that horde for 8 hours to increase its state from one to another. So, like, really incentivizes dragon slayers to carry these weapons, or items rather. And if they become unattuned and aren't in a horde, they decrease in power. But basically, it's they start off, slumbering abilities. They all start off as like uncommon items that are pretty good, and then like their abilities just get better and better the more they're steeped into dragon hordes. So we get things like weapons, spell focuses, potion bottle. That's a very weird one. And some sort of ornament. Could be jewelry, cloak, accessory of some sort. And then finally, Draconic Gifts. So in the same vein as, Fey boons or things like that, dragons can give gifts. One of the recommendations that they give is like, if you, like, this could be imparted to you from a dragon, or it could be like, if you kill a dragon that's sufficiently powerful, it could spontaneously erupt these gifts to you. So things like pseudo-dragon familiar. You become a dragonborn. Like, you are instantly reincarnated to be a dragonborn. You get draconic senses, dragon sight. Like, you get dragon sight. Frightful presence. Telekinesis. You just become resistant to piercing and slashing damage of all types. Or you get a bunch of, dragon speech-related abilities. It also has a sidebar for, like, bestowing feats as draconic gifts. So things like Keen Mind, Inspiring Leader, Durable, Resilient, Tough, Elemental Adept, yada, yada, yada. It talks about roleplay for dragons. So this is introducing them as NPCs. So they have dragon characters listed as a chapter. I got very excited thinking that, like, oh, are we reintroducing Council of Worms, which was a campaign setting where you play as dragons? This is not that. This is essentially custom DMG tables for dragons specifically as NPCs. So, but they talk about interesting stuff. It's like, what are dragon lifespans like? Various forms of how dragon eggs come to be. And introducing, like, not just, regular, like, as if dragons are like any other creature and reproduce that way, but like very weird magical things like spontaneous reincarnation or seedlings of the first world. So, like, at the heart of the world, there's a tree that grows dragon eggs, which I think that was sort of the plot in... It was related to it was somewhat like the plot in Doolittle. Dragons would have to consume treasure in order to lay eggs. They have to craft eggs. Non-dragons that are sufficiently enlightened transform into dragon eggs when they die. Spontaneous formation. So they might just arise similar to veins of metal or gemstones. Rejuvenated. So an ancient dragon voluntarily enters a deep trance and dies and leaves behind a single egg. So sort of like a phoenix. So all very interesting concepts, as opposed to just like dragons having eggs much in the same way that other reptiles do. They talk about how you can have half dragons using different methods. So things like like a curse, so that like people that steal treasure from a dragon's hoard become half dragons. They talk about undeath and different types of undead dragons. Shapeshifting. This is a big point of contention, since people really want their red dragons to be able to change into people. And they make a big stink about it instead of just giving them that feature. When there's a sidebar in the monster manual that talks about innate spellcasting. But it talks about other I think it's in a different section. It gives like a whole bunch of like optional features that you can swap in on dragons to customize them. Talks about dragon organizations, namely, so one that I think is really interesting is there's an apocalyptic cult that is seeking to bring back the first world by destroying all other material planes and harvesting their essence to refabricate the first original world. Talk about different ways to do dragon encounters, dragon campaigns, lairs, different types of dragon hordes, what's in a horde. So the Draconomicon is a section in the book where they talk about dragons proper, although they also include dragon turtles and fairy dragons, which are not usually included in dragons proper. So this has the 5 varieties of chromatics, the 5 varieties of metallics, the 5 varieties of gem dragons, but also includes deep dragons, dragon turtles, fairy dragons, and moonstone dragons and shadow dragons. And namely like the different age categories and different features they might have, different both like as the dragon itself, different lair features, different regional features, sort of what makes that dragon interesting, personality traits, ideals, adventure hooks, connections. Might talk about like a specific individual of that dragon type. It will give a typical lair with a map and different lair features, treasures that you might find in that horde. So yeah, some really interesting stuff going on there. Particularly with like dragon turtles and fairy dragons, and deep dragons. Deep dragons in particular, because like deep dragons typically neutral evil, but like hate confrontation. Like they like seem to be more cognizant of their mortality than other dragons are. And so like do not prefer to do things directly and will like get other things to do their bidding for them. Also covered in mushrooms, which is a distinct departure from how they're typically portrayed, which in past editions have been like as purple dragons, where they're very like sinewy and almost worm-like, not with a Y, but like with an O. Like almost like an earthworm with wings, like a scaly earthworm with wings, very, very thin and sinewy. to get through like very narrow tunnels. And then finally we have the bestiary, where they talk about the different kinds of dragons and their stats. Animated breath. They have aspects of Bahamut and Tiamat. So Bahamut no longer does the disintegrating breath. He's got a platinum breath, which is radiant damage, and then an exalting breath. And I like this better than previous editions doing like, oh, disintegration breath. Blah, blah. No. The aspect of Bahamut exhales the restoring winds of Mount Celestia, where Bahamut resides, in a 300-foot cone. Each creature in that area of the aspect's choice regains 13d10 hit points. And each creature in that area of the aspect's choice that has been dead for no longer than an hour is restored to life with all hit points. That is one of its breath weapons. So those are the 2 breath weapons. It recharges on a 5 or a 6. This is, if you are fighting an aspect of Bahamut. Number 1, what are you doing? Number 2, like, that is going to be a long, drawn-out fight. I'm pretty sure the stats are included in here more for using the aspect of Bahamut as an ally and introducing it as a way to, like, if you're doing a big cosmic level fight with, like, lots of enemies and you want the players to be involved, but, like, you know that they can't do it on their own. Like, this is a way to do it. And it kind of gives you, like, a little bit of a safe mode. Because if anybody dies, like, so this is like 0 hit points. This is dead, is restored to life with all hit points, and this is a rechargeable ability. So this is an interesting way of, like, I would say save it for a dramatic moment. Like, let's say it's a big battle, and it's like a pitched battle, and it's intended to be a pitched battle from the beginning. And the party just gets wiped, right? Aspect of Bahamut shows up very dramatically, exalting breath, everybody's back up with full hit points. And now the aspect of Bahamut has joined the fray. Lot of monsters in here have mythic abilities, so that's something to keep in mind. Lots of mythic sections here. It also talks about how dragons, in order to maintain legendary status, have to keep a horde of a certain size and have a lair of a certain size. I think that was interesting, so that, like, you could, in theory, strip a dragon of its legendary abilities by somehow pilfering its horde and reducing it below a certain threshold. So yeah, gem dragons, they're pretty cool. You know, I've always been a big fan of gem dragons. They have Draco Hydras, which are like hydras that become mini Tiamats. They have Draconians. They kind of like made Draconians generic and then have like a little after sort of text talking about what they're called in Krynn and how they're formed in Krynn. But they also like tweak them a bit, and they don't include them as like, they don't include stats to play as them. So I don't know if the intention is, if you were going to do Draconian characters, like, if the intention is you just play Dragonborn? I don't know. But, like, I don't know. But they've got the 5 kinds. You know, they have Sivux, Baz, Kapux, Bozaks, and Oryx. One of the things is they keep the method of creating Draconians in there. Of like, you have to corrupt dragon eggs, but now it's extended so that it's any kind of dragon eggs. And then it's specifically on Krynn, they have to be formed from metallic dragon eggs. But you get weird things like like a draconian mastermind. But it's like amethyst, and it does not look great. I have to say, it looks like some kind of weird, like you would see like lizard man, like a lizard man type alien from like 1950s movies. You know, the draconian infiltrator, which is supposed to be the Kopak one. It's got some weird purport. It's like its head is way too big, and its legs are way too small. But otherwise, you know, they keep a lot of the same stuff. You know, mainly the big thing with Draconians is that they have death throws instead of breath weapons. So like when they die, they do some sort of spectacular effect. So, you know, they might petrify, they might, you know, melt into a puddle of acid, they might explode, turn into a ball of lightning, that sort of stuff. But I'm glad to see them. Oozes, Golem, like Dragon Blood Ooze, Dragon Bone Golem. They have Dragonborn Champions. Dragonels make a return, so this was a way of sort of a low challenge rating flying mount for players who wanted like a dragon, but so like visually it looks like a dragon, but like it doesn't have a breath weapon or anything like that. So yeah, so we'll talk briefly about the Eye Drake and the Elder Brain Dragon. The Eye Drake is what happens when a beholder dreams of a dragon. And so it's basically kind of just like a beholder that doesn't have perpetual anti-magic cone. So it almost feels like Beholder Light. It's also not legendary. But the Elder Brain Dragon is truly horrifying. Namely, its breath weapon, which is a 120-foot line that is 15 feet wide. So that's a huge area. It's a high con save, deals psychic damage, and regardless of whether you succeed or fail, if you aren't a construct or an undead, you become infested with illithid tadpoles, which then deal psychic damage over time. And in order to clear them, it requires 3 successful saves, curse removal magic healing of 40 hit points or more, that will kill the tadpoles instantly. If that doesn't happen and it reduces 0 hit points, you are stable, but you remain unconscious for 6d12 hours as you turn into a Mind Flayer. So if the creature's unconscious, the only way to rid it of the infestation so you can also stop it with a wish spell. So and it can use tentacles to grapple people up to huge size. And if it grapples a spellcaster, it can then use a legendary action to shatter concentration on any spells. If it does end concentration on a spell, the target takes extra psychic damage. Blind sight 120 feet. And because it's an elder brain attached to a dragon, it has telepathy out to 5 miles. It takes everything. Okay, so it takes a lot of the utility stuff that the elder brain has, and it just like attaches it to a dragon and gives it the mobility of a dragon. It is truly, truly horrible. All right. All in all, I think it's a fun book. You know, I think they kind of built it up a bit more. Like they hyped it up a bit more than what it ended up being. It's all fairly standard Draconomicon stuff. Like if you've owned a Draconomicon book, like you've seen all of this before. They definitely did not have as many features regarding like players, like player options as they were hinting at. Like it would have been nice as I would have liked to have seen some more subclasses, some more feats, especially like if you're gonna put Dragonborn in here, like put feats for Dragonborn. And also the most inexcusable, no kobolds anywhere. There's no mention of kobolds in this book. So I don't know if they're gonna put kobolds in the multiverse book that's coming in January, but I'm not happy. They should have been in this book. So, all right. So all in all, I mean, I'd rate this book. You know, like, so here's the thing. If you're running a very dragon heavy campaign, this book, I would say give it like a 4.5 out of 5, maybe a 4 out, like somewhere, but you know, we'll call it 4.25 out of 5. If you're not running a campaign that's very dragon heavy, I'd say maybe a 4. It's got some interesting concepts that can help you think of like, why doesn't your setting have dragons, and like what happened to them, and other things that you can do to replace dragons. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, most campaign settings are going to have dragons one way or another. So I would have liked to have seen more player options in this book, and like more spells, more magic items. But you know, got to do what you got to do. So that is going to wrap that up. So we're going to do a quest log pretty quick. All right, so quest log is going to relate to my last coffee and comics stream. Basically, I started working on, just on a whim, since I had extra time, some crossover fan art of one of the new characters in Critical Role Campaign 3, Laudna, Marisha Ray's character, who's spooky, totally not spooky ring girl, Samara, as a Pokemon trainer with a ghost type Pokemon, because it works. So you know, I don't know if I'm gonna post it anywhere, but I'm gonna work on it. It might just be something for me. So yeah. As far as getting caught up on stuff, I think I'm not gonna do any highlights from the various Holostream streams. So no highlights for Skull. But that just leaves this week's Stardew Valley. So I did do 2 video edits this week for Stardew Sundays 28 and 29. Those went up, or in the process of being put up, on YouTube. And then, you know, hopefully finish Stardew 30 sometime this week. So, but yeah, but I ultimately decided I'm not going to do the Skull highlights. So, all right. Well, it is 8:30, so that is going to wrap things up for this week. Thank you all for joining me. If you would like to see more content from 8-Bit Adventures, be sure to check out 8-bitadventures.com. You can see that in the chat. If you would like to help support that content, you can become a patron over at patreon.com/8bitadventures. Patrons get early access to comics, which the comics are about 3 weeks early right now, so you can see them quite a bit early than the general public. As well as, you know, behind the scenes content for my campaign setting and other things like that. There's also patron exclusive comics. If the $5 a month for a Twitch subscription is too much and you've already used your Twitch Prime somewhere, you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. It also helps if you're an audio podcast listener and not a live watcher. So big shout out, thank you to all of the current patrons. Thank you so much for your support. There is a Discord server for those that are interested in seeing what else is going on and chatting with other folks in the community. So the link is in chat here. The link is also up on sort of the about page on Twitch. So if you're an audio listener, it is on there. I will see if I can start including that in the show notes, so you can get it from there. And finally, our opening theme is one up by Professor Shy Guy. You can find his work over at professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. So that's going to wrap things up here. Thank you so much again for joining me. And as always, have fun, happy gaming, and enjoy your pie cake.